There we go.
Great. And I think what I'll also do is I'll pin this. So I should be, I think, the only one who shows up. Anyway, so this talk is called Community College Bound. Consider this before you go. I'm Dr. P. I'm the president and founder of Crimson Coaching. And I started out my years as a high school teacher. I founded Crimson Coaching, which provides academic tutoring, task prep, and college consulting to students worldwide. I started that in 2014. And the year after, 2015, I re-entered a classroom, but at the community college level. So I both am the full-time owner and operator of Crimson Coaching, which generally provides tutoring to high school students. But then I also teach part-time for the City University of New York at Bronx Community College. So I think I have kind of a unique perspective on sort of high school students venturing into the community college arena. A lot of people ask me why my company is called Crimson Coaching. And as you might be able to see from the mats of the photo and diploma behind me, they are crimson, which is the color of my alma mater, Harvard. And what I do is I really coach students to achieve their highest potential. So tonight's agenda, I'm hoping to kind of give students a variety of thoughts. Mostly will be about community college, but some of them are also some alternatives to four-year colleges that are not two-year colleges, because I think many people at this stage are not really quite sure where they want to go. If you could keep your Zoom muted during the presentation, but feel free to throw questions into the chat as they come up in your brain. And then afterwards, we're a small enough group here that after I'm all done speaking, you can feel free to unmute yourself. Before we go any further, though, I would just like to thank those of you who are showing up tonight, and if you're watching this later on, for watching, and to Ms. Liana Coletti for inviting me back again to give a talk at West Islip Public Library, and to the library itself for hosting tonight's talk. So as a historian, that's actually what I teach at the community college level. I'm big into being really transparent about my sources. So some of them are personal, coming from my 25th reunion from Harvard. This is where I lived there. I went to a talk by the undergraduate director of admissions, William Fitzsimmons there. So some of it comes from that. A lot of it is professional, working with high school students. This is where I started my career in Great Neck North High School, but I ended it at Scarsdale High School in Westchester, and in between at Horace Mann School, an independent day school in New York City. But the bulk of my professional experience is really through Crimson Coaching, where I work one-on-one with students, and I've helped them get into schools like Princeton, like Stanford, you know, I also will, throughout all of this, keep up with the latest research that's coming out. So Jeffrey Salingo in 2020 came out with this book, Who Gets In and Why? A Year Inside College Admissions. And his colleague at the New York Times, Ron Lieber, who's the personal finance columnist, came out with the book last year, The Price You Pay for College. And both of them have a lot of great insights for students on questions that you really want to ask yourself before you enroll in community college. So let's look at what some of the main options are for after you graduate high school and the pros and cons of each. Obviously, you can go right out to the workforce and perhaps even get an apprenticeship, and I'll have someone on video talk about that in a second. The advantage is that you will get more money right now, but in the future, income advancement may be more difficult because, as we know, many times raises are predicated on the degrees that you have. So generally people who make bachelors make more than people who have associates, and people who have masters make more than people who have bachelors. You might also want to take a gap year where you're not making any money. You might want to travel or get an internship. The great thing about that is that you can gain valuable experience that could help you figure out what you want to do later on. And you could also make valuable connections that can help open doors for you later on. However, this could become an expensive proposition if you're not making money. So sometimes that's kind of out of the reach for a lot of middle-class families. If you're here tonight, I'm assuming that a 2-year college to get an associate's degree is probably on your mind. And this can be less expensive than a 4-year college if you go right into the 4-year college, if you do it correctly. And we're going to talk about how to do it correctly in a second. And you would be among the 30% of all US undergraduates who are actually at 2-year colleges right now. So a lot of times you may not really hear that because there's so much kind of emphasis put on 4-year schools, but almost a third of high school or of US undergrads are at 2-year colleges. Of course, 4-year colleges usually are a bit more expensive or a lot more expensive, whether you're at a public or private, but they're often the best opportunity for long-term professional advancement. And then, I do just want to stress the fact that by 2031, which is actually right around the corner, it's not even 10 years from now, there will be 35 million new job openings. 30% are available to people with just a high school diploma. Another 30% open to people who probably have somewhere around an associate's, and then another 40% will have that four-year degree or higher. So, if you feel like a bachelor's degree or 4-year school is not right for you, you could be in the 70% of all new jobs being created within 10 years. So lots of people might want to go straight out to the workforce. And a great thing to consider is apprenticeships. And I'm going to have Mike Tudisco, who is the owner of an apprenticeship company that matches students up with apprenticeships, tell you a little bit more about what apprenticeships are.
Hello, we are here today to discuss a career path alternative that does not require college. More focused on training programs that last anywhere from 1 year to 5 years in length, is nationally recognized, very similar to college transcripts, but is truly your first step in your career ladder of success. My name is Michael Tudisco, President of Apprenticeship Connections, and I am a workforce development consultant that specializes in implementing focused and formalized training programs to help develop and grow companies' workforce. Most people have never heard of this before, but I'm referring to registered apprenticeship programs. A registered apprenticeship program is taking any individual, regardless of their age, new hire, or an incumbent worker, and teaching them a skill or trade. It is including on-the-job training as well as classroom education. When I say on-the-job training, this is time-based. It could be anywhere from 2,000, 4,000 hours, if not more, and you are truly guaranteed a wage progression so that earn while you learn. If you work hard, you get rewarded. Then you take into factor the related instruction or classroom education. That classroom education is paid for by the employer. It can be done online, at a SUNY university, or a local vocational school, all paid for by the employer. So you could be hired by a company, go through a 3-year training program with a guaranteed wage increase and a college education paid for by the employer. Yes, this is true. And this is in so many different industries. There's about 170 different apprenticeship programs in New York State alone: construction, manufacturing, health and human services, hospitality. Again, the options are endless. Again, apprenticeship programs. For an apprentice, you get a full-time job with a guaranteed wage progression, on-the-job training, as well as post-secondary education. If you want to find out more, please contact me. My website is www.accc, that's 3 C's, nys.org, or I can be reached at 516-457-8037. Thank you and good luck.
And this is
we are here today.
Stop Mike there again, because that's going to loop back. And this is again, Michael's name, email, and phone number in case you're interested in Apprentice. So let's go on. Some people might like to not get an apprenticeship, but they might like to work instead of, or increasingly during college. And in fact, many community college students are working as they go to college. I can tell you when I teach my courses at Bronx Community College, I often have students, because I teach online, they are actually at work. I can see them in their scrubs or in their security guard uniform, and they are on a break from work. And so it is quite common for community college students to work while they're going to school. And Amy Geffen at Geffen Careers, here she is, will give us, this is just going to be an audio clip of some tips for
my name is Amy Geffen and I'm a career coach.
I don't know if you can hear this.
Some tips today for your job search. Number one.
Sorry, I don't think that it's probably super audible. So I'm just going to actually go through. But again, these were given by Amy. Join a professional organization. For example, American Nurses. They're an important source of job information and professional development.
You need to join a professional organization.
Expand your network. You can start with family, friends, classmates, teachers, but I really encourage you to also try LinkedIn. I happen to be giving another talk on this Thursday night, so in 2 nights, that will be at Hop Hog Public Library, but it'll also be live streamed on their YouTube page at 7 p.m. On how to use social media to apply to college. And I'm going to actually be talking about LinkedIn there. So if you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to join in with that. I even as a business owner use LinkedIn all the time to reach out to people who I might need help from. Let all these people know that you're looking for a job. And then you also want to think about getting a summer job or internship, even if it's not in your field yet. And these are things that you can even be doing right now as high school students, because even if it's not in your field, let's say you're working at Friendly's, but you want to be a vet tech, for example. Showing up on time, establishing a good working record, and then potentially getting a recommendation or a reference from an employer could help parlay you once you have the certificate to go in to be a vet tech.
Conferences.
Sorry. So many people, they don't want to go into the workforce yet, but they're struggling with how to decide, should I go away to generally a 4-year school to go for a bachelor's, or should I stay home and enroll in a community college, Suffolk County Community College or Nassau County Community College? And Eileen DeAris is going to give us a little bit of insight on things that we might want to consider to help us make this decision of 4-year versus 2-year.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eileen Barraras. I'm a certified life coach for young adults between the ages of 17 and 29. And what I do is I help them learn more about themselves, develop more confidence and clarity so they can figure out direction as to what it is they want to do next in life. Whether it's going to college, getting a job, figuring out their major, or just learning more about themselves so they can feel more prepared for their future. So one question that I'm often asked is, how do I know if my young adult is ready to go away to school? Good question. And what I would tell you to focus on is your young adult's independence. How much can they do for themselves? So in terms of self-care, do they eat well? Can they do their own laundry? Can they wake up by themselves? If they take medication, can they do that on their own? And if they're sick, would they know to go to health services? Also, my other question is, how resilient are they? If an issue pops up and things are difficult, How quick do they bounce back? What types of things do they do to help themselves through the tough times? Do they journal? Do they work out? Can they talk to a friend? So how quick can they bounce back when stuff gets tough? And also managing themselves throughout the school itself. How do they do when it comes to group projects? Are they able to keep up with that? If they have a question for their professor, would they feel comfortable going up to the professor to ask for help? When roommates, and I'm going to say when because it's real life, when roommate issues arise, do they have the communication skills that they need in order to be able to manage that? Listen, I don't want you to think that going away to college is smooth sailing regardless. Everyone's going to have issues. It's normal, it's real life. So sit down with your young adult, come to a conclusion together of whether you feel and they feel it's time to go away. Most importantly, I want to tell you, don't assume that just because you see everyone else going away to school, that it's time for your young adult to go away as well. I made that mistake with my young adult who went away to school, and I thought she was supposed to just like everyone else, and she had a very difficult time. So go with your gut. Figure out what it is, what you really think. And remember that whenever your young adult does decide to go away or go to college, you're not going to be behind if you don't do it exactly at the same time as everyone else. There's always ample opportunity to learn independence before they go away. Please be kind to yourself as the parent and be kind to your young adult and patient, and it's all going to work out okay. Thank you for listening.
And I think that's actually great advice.
Hello, everybody.
And this is
everybody. My name is
sorry. This is Eileen Dararis's email, phone, and name of her company if you're interested in reaching out to her.
Eileen Dararis.
So other questions that you can consider and how the answers should steer you. And a lot of this comes from Ron Lieber's book, The Price You Pay for College. It's really important to ask yourself, what do I want to get out of college? And Lieber argues that there are three main reasons why people go to college. The first is, do I want to have my mind blown? The second is, do I want to find my tribe, meaning the people who are going to be at my wedding, maybe the person I actually marry and be with lifelong friends? Or do I want to get trained to do a job and advance economically? Now, to be fair, most people go to college for all three of these things, but most of us also have an order, and I would encourage you to think about what your main order is. And Lieber argues that splitting the undergraduate experience in two, meaning half at a community college, half at a four-year school, does make it harder to seek out real kinship, meaning finding your tribe, or have a mentor blow your mind. So if your main reasons for going to school are the first two bullet points, you may want to consider either waiting a year and starting at the four-year school when you're ready, working and starting at a four-year school, because it is so difficult to do those first two things at two different places. So if you decide that a four-year college is not appropriate for you right now, let's look at some of the reasons why a two-year college might be right. I think the first reason, which is incredibly important right now as we face rising inflation, is to save money. Obviously, tuition is much cheaper at two-year schools, and you're saving really on room and board because generally you're living with mom and dad. You also might want to explore your academic options if you're uncertain of what your major might be. But as I'll argue later, if you're uncertain, if you know that you're going in to explore, that's fine. But if you are exploring without setting up a path to transfer into a four-year college, just know that you will most likely not graduate in 4 years with a bachelor's, because usually you need to really line up all those courses right from the get-go at the two-year school in order to have them transfer over to the four-year school. a lot of students sort of say, well, this was especially true during COVID. It was the same tuition, but there were fewer amenities, fewer parties, lots of social restrictions. And so they kind of just said, well, I should just go to a 2-year college if I'm paying the same amount and going to get less. You'll also have the emotional support, hopefully, of mom and dad, siblings, friends. And this is real big for many of my students at Bronx Community College, flexible class hours and modalities, meaning online, hybrid, those kinds of things will allow you to fulfill or pursue your work and family obligations as you're going to school. And then, I spoke with my cousin's son who went to Suffolk and is now a TSA worker. And he talked about, he was able to have a car, he said sleep in his own bed, have more of a life outside of the campus. And he liked that. The flip side, of course, is that it is much, if you're looking for a more typical, traditional college experience, that is very difficult to get at the 2-year school. Okay, so you really have to be sure about what are you looking for out of your college experience. Interestingly enough, the Chronicle of Higher Ed just came out a couple of months ago with this chart, which shows that over the past year, unemployment among people who had an associate's degree plummeted as much as people who had master's degrees. It went from, over 15% all the way down to just over 4%. Whereas people who have bachelor's degree, the dotted line in red, their unemployment actually went up slightly. So that's kind of really, really an interesting trend to keep in mind. So how common is it to attend community college? Well, as I mentioned, about 30% of US undergraduates go to community colleges, but the sharpest decline among college enrollments since COVID, which have been going down, has been among 2-year institutions. So what does that mean for you? Well, the good news is it's going to be easier for you to get in, most likely. The bad news is that classes might be cut because that fewer students are attending. And if you're relying on community college as a cost-saving measure, it may be more difficult to get the classes that you need to transfer and graduate in 4 years. I will also say, in case there are any high school students out there right now who are in dual enrollment programs where you're in high school, but also getting classes, college credit through a community college, you should just know it's not a bad thing, but in terms of applying to 4-year colleges, that those programs are generally seen as not as rigorous as the AP courses or IB, International Baccalaureate classes that you would take in your high school itself, okay? Ron Lieber in The Price You Pay for College writes in the chapter that he entitles Community College Will Save You Money, but What Might You Lose? He writes that starting an undergraduate career at a community college can be a terrific hack. But for it to save a large amount of money without sacrificing potentially important parts of the college experience, students need to develop a plan that is close to perfect before they even begin to start. So this is why I mentioned that, if cost saving rather than exploring is your main goal, you might want to wait until you're really certain about what your major is before you even start at a community college. He goes on to write, let's dispense with the idea that spending 2 years at a community college before transferring to a 4-year school will be a breeze. At the Community College Research Center, part of Columbia's Teachers College, A 2016 study of more than 700,000 students who had started community college in 2007 found that just 14% of them had transferred to a 4-year school and graduated within 6 years. So that is really low. In some states, students had done better, but even in those states, only 18% of enrollees had gotten their bachelor's degree. And again, that's within 6 years, not within 4. So, 6 years, if you're looking at, from start of community college to end of getting my bachelor's, let's say I'm one of the 14%, if that's taking you 6 years, well, you could see that you're not really shaving off that much time out of the 4-year school, okay? So to make sure that the 2 years at the community college do save you money in the long run, it is highly recommended that you find a transfer admissions representative and a faculty member in your intended major department at the 4-year school, okay? This is very important. So, if you're thinking of starting at Suffolk and eventually going to Binghamton, you need to find these people at Binghamton and verify before you register for classes every single semester that the courses you're registering for will transfer and be accepted by the department in which you plan to major, so that you do not have to take extra courses when you get to SUNY Binghamton. Also, if you are being funneled into lots of remedial classes in the community college, and PS, this more often happens to students of color, you should consider getting the instruction elsewhere if you really need it, or ask to prove your knowledge through an exam if you believe that you have the requisite knowledge to go into a regular course, because remedial courses cost money, but they don't count towards your degree. So it's really important that if you don't need them, you don't enroll in them. Also, just remember that if you are going to community college, you will need to fill out the Common App when and if you transfer. It is generally a less onerous process than starting as a high school senior, but and you might want to just keep up at commonapp.org what those new updates are from year to year. You also want to ask your community college advisor the following questions. And if you're taking notes, don't worry, come back to this because I have a lot of questions here and you're not going to be able to get them all down. That's okay. You can pause this if you're watching on the record. Ask your community college, what percentage of the people who start here end up with a bachelor's degree within 4 years, within 6 years, or within 10 years, okay? To know what your chances are before you start. Ask, where do the majority of the people who do transfer end up? Then ask for all the details about the college's articulation agreements. These are the agreements that, say, Suffolk has with all of the different SUNYs, or, the SUNY or other schools, that say this class counts for that class. That's what the articulation agreement is. If there are 8 or 12 or 16 classes that I must take to finish community college and transfer out in 2 years, what quirks might I run into? Meaning, are certain classes only offered in off years or in the fall? Find all these things out beforehand. Those 2 years go by really quick. Are there particular classes that fill up fast? If so, what's the trick to making sure I get registered in time? Again, are there certain classes that are offered only at certain semesters or at certain times? If so, should I register for those first and build the rest of my schedule around them? So these are all questions that you could ask your community college advisor, okay? This next set of tips is really applicable to any college, whether you are at a four-year school, and frankly, also if you're in graduate school. But I think it's especially important for students at a two-year school, where it's often, I think, really easy for students to get sort of lost in the shuffle. The first thing you want to do is find a mentor. Now, I should say that a mentor does not need to be somebody much older than you. A mentor could just be a student who's a semester before you or a year before you, somebody who can help show you the ropes at that institution. You also want to get involved. Making connections socially with your peers is one of the best ways not only to be emotionally happy and fulfilled, but it's also a great source for networking and job placement later on. Other ideas for mentors. A mentor could be a professor, could be older students, it could be counselors, coaches, or club advisors. And other ideas for getting involved. You could join a sort of, formally organized club, sport, fraternity, or sorority. But it could also be the more informal study groups. I have students, I teach online, and usually there's always one student who will put in the chat of Zoom, hey, does everybody want to send me their WhatsApp app number, or let's start a WhatsApp chat for this class. Another way to get involved is to try to get a job on campus, so that you're not just kind of driving to campus and then driving right home. Try to take some of your meals on campus, maybe work out on campus, so that you're more likely to sort of bump into people and make those kind of informal connections. And if you have the chance to join a cohort, do it. So cohorts are different at different colleges. Sometimes they will basically, a cohort is sort of like a group of students that you may be put into the same classes with, and you may go through sort of a group of core classes together with. Those types of experience really increase the bonds among those students, and also lead to greater academic success if you're really taking advantage of that social network there. Also, by the time you do transfer, you will find, like say if you transfer and you're a junior, you will find that many of the other juniors who have been at that school since they were freshmen will be living off campus. But it's really recommended that you try to live on campus at the four-year institution, because you're brand new there. And if you're living off campus, it's going to be much more difficult to make these kinds of connections that I've just talked about if you're off campus. So that's kind of the end of my prepared remarks. I know that it was a lot of information, but if you would like to learn more and maybe even attend a future webinar, feel free to sign up for my newsletter at crimsoncoaching.com. I send out just one newsletter a month, and at the very bottom, it gives all the talks, all the free talks that I'm giving for that month. And usually libraries are great about letting you cross-register for other libraries. Usually you don't need to be a member at most of the libraries that I speak at. You can email me at info@crimsoncoaching.com to receive Dr. P's tips on community college applications. If you like Crimson Coaching on Facebook, you'll also get news of upcoming talks. But I will say I'm not always great about getting onto Facebook Live. Like today, I was supposed to advertise this talk, but I didn't have a chance to before. So the surefire way of doing that is either going to my website at crimsoncoaching.com and then go to the classes and workshops page, or sign up for my webinar. And then if you subscribe to YouTube, to youtube.com/crimsoncoaching, you will also get a whole bunch of other talks similar to this one. I also have, sort of how to write a great college application. Should I take the SAT or not? All different kinds of talks relating to adolescent education and the college planning process. And while you're there, if you could please subscribe, it's a great way to say thank you, and it helps the channel to grow. So with that, I will take questions. Feel free to either unmute yourself, or if you'd like to put it into the chat. I will not put anybody's name up on the screen here, so don't worry about that. Any questions about anything that I spoke about tonight? Well, I know sometimes people think about questions kind of after the talk has ended. So I do want to invite you to feel free to email me at info@crimsoncoaching.com if a question pops up in your head tomorrow in the shower. But before we go, I do just want to say thank you once again to everybody for showing up this evening, as well as to Ms. Coletti for inviting me, and West Islip Public Library for sponsoring tonight's talk. One last chance at questions. You're welcome to the person who just said thank you. All right, well, I hope that means that the presentation was so thorough that I answered all your questions before they came up. But if not, again, just feel free to email me, and I'll try to do my best to send you on in the right direction to get an answer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Padurano.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your summer.
Yes.
Great.
All right. Everybody can enjoy, and thanks so much for the community college. I think it's so important that I feel like my parents always pushed me to go to college, and you can't do anything with your life unless you go to college. I always felt like I had to go to a four-year school, but when it came time to choosing, you have to do what's best for you. And what was best for me was community college. So, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. And, with college expenses so high nowadays and inflation, community college really is a smart bet. It's just, you just want to think of all the things that I did mention so that it does remain a smart financial bet, and you don't have to repeat courses later on because you didn't know, what counted for what, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again. Okay. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.